Mysterious neighbor. In a quiet, peaceful neighborhood, people were connected through neighborly relationships. However, at one end of the neighborhood lived Mrs. Johnson, representing the dark side within everyone. She was a quiet and mysterious woman, and other neighbors avoided interacting with her because her eyes always gleamed with an odd coldness. One day, Emily, a young and curious woman from the neighborhood, became Mrs. Johnson's neighbor. Emily knew her neighborhood to be warm and friendly, so she was determined to unravel the mystery behind Mrs. Johnson's calm demeanor. She was initially greeted with a polite hello, but over time, Mrs. Johnson's peculiar behavior began to capture her attention. One evening, as Emily was cooking in her home, she heard strange sounds outside her door. When she went out, she noticed a strange circle in Mrs. Johnson's yard filled with mysterious symbols. Intrigued, she knocked on Mrs. Johnson's door to inquire about the meaning of these symbols. However, no one answered the door. The next day, as Emily roamed the neighborhood, she heard from other neighbors that they were disturbed by Mrs. Johnson's behavior and harbored suspicions about her. Some even claimed she might be linked to an old murder. Learning about these rumors only fueled Emily's curiosity. One night, Emily decided to wander around Mrs. Johnson's house. While peering through a window, she witnessed a bizarre ritual taking place inside. The walls were adorned with symbols drawn in blood, and burnt images lay among the candles. Emily stood frozen for a moment. Suddenly, Mrs. Johnson looked directly at Emily through the window. Her eyes were colder than ever, and Emily recoiled in fear. Emily, avoiding Mrs. Johnson's cold gaze, heard the words uttered by the woman's lips. "Secrets are hidden in the darkness, and you have a secret too." At that moment, all the lights in the neighborhood went out abruptly. A dark laughter mingled with Emily's scream. Then, strange sounds from Mrs. Johnson's house combined into a melody that intoxicated the entire neighborhood. Doors and windows shook and shadows danced everywhere. Terrified, Emily ran back to her home, but Mrs. Johnson's house remained engulfed in darkness. Emily, trembling in her bed, woke up to the dream of strange symbols every night. The melody from Mrs. Johnson's house dragged her into nightmares. One day, other neighbors began to see strange symbols and hear odd sounds. Everyone confronted their own fears. Emily realized that everything in the neighborhood had a dark secret, and the mysterious power emanating from Mrs. Johnson's house connected everyone. Eventually, the people in the neighborhood succumbed to the presence of Mrs. Johnson's mysterious entity, disappearing into a silent darkness.